We received that from the state of Illinois, and that we're required to give each one of those taxing bodies, the fire pension, police pension, and the library, 14% of whatever we levy. So that too goes to the pensions. The required amount, requested amount for the police was $1,219,800. The fire pension was $831,854. So the total amount, if you add up what we've got in column, what do you want to say in column 1, 2, 3, is $730,000 under fire pension, $1,070,000 under police pension. If you add those two to the two figures down below, the 102.2 and the 149.8, you'll come up with a little bit more than what they're requesting. And that's on every single page. The 2.4, the 3, the 2.4% actually increased the city's revenue by 35.5, or 0.89%. Clear as mud? No, no pun intended.
Right.
She's heard it before.
Right.
As I said earlier, we know we're gonna have to start increasing in the next few years also to replenish the funds that we're losing. Because once you lose the money in these levies, you don't ever get them back. You don't get that money back. So there may come a time when we're gonna have to start increasing our tax levy. And we thought that by starting here at 3%, it'd be less of a burden on the tax property owners than taking it up to the 5%, which we by law can do. We can take it down to 0%, but if we do that, that's going to impact on any capital improvement projects. So, as we discussed this whole thing, it was the consensus of the committee that we'd ask for we would make a proposal to the council at a 3% tax levy.
Didn't last year, what was
2.5.
2.5, so we ended up losing about 82,000, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know exactly what the figures were, but we did lose money.
Yeah, I think, that we would never regain.
You know, if the path, this seems like if you say, well, let's go from 2.5 to 3%, you say, well, why do we need that? Well, you could go through the 40 pages of the budget and say this or this. This year, and nobody likes a tax increase. I mean, this year you need it because the two pensions increased $364,000. So it's those two items that cause the need for an increase. If there's a need for an increase, it sets right there. There it is. I mean, that's a third of a million, over a third of $1 million. I don't see, from what I understand, that the trend in this is going to be the actuaries work off 5-year numbers. This is the second year. It's going to probably go up again next year. Long story short, our board attorney for the pensions reforms thinks that these actuaries were hired because of their actuarial assumptions were going to make these pensions very high, to try to get down the percent or up the percentage from. Don't know if that's true, but if that's true, then they're going to go up every year. So.
I think that sometimes there's a misconception out there when we say we're going to raise the tax rate 3%, that the general population believes that that's going to increase their property taxes 3%, and that's not true. I mean, we don't increase property taxes. The county does the assessment, and they set the rates there. So, if anybody talks to you and they say, you know, you're going to raise my property taxes by 3%, that's not true. It's just the tax levy. Any discussion?
I'd just like to chime in and say, this is probably the lowest tax levy we have passed last year. I think CD had it down to 3.75, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you draw it down this low, you're draining your coffers, and you need to keep that 6-9 months in your coffers. So I would rather see it up around 3.5, maybe even 4, but 3.5 at the minimum.
What do other municipalities, what's the average, do we know?
Pardon me?
What's the average of municipalities?
Lori, I don't know. I have no idea.
We represent several smaller municipalities and they're right at 5%. They're just under the cap.
That's a
If
good
it's more than
question.
5% increase, you have to have a public hearing on it. So they'll go right to that 5% every year because it does compound. The 2% you leave on the table this year, you're
Yes.
never gonna get back.
Yeah, you lose that, so
So
you're
it has
losing
nothing-
money every
It
year.
has nothing to do with us being a home rule community?
No,
Okay.
no.
Not at all.
Oh, I kind of tend to agree with Bill, that maybe we should ask for a little bit more this year.
Well, it's been, 4 years, we've dropped low, we used to be 5%.
Last year
Well-
was 2.5%, the year before was 3%, and I think the year before that was 3.75, or maybe 3.3%, and then 3.75 before that. We've been hovering right around 2.5 to 3% all the
We've
time.
held low for a while, but, I'm the same too, looking at the pension fund, we need to fund it, it needs to go up, we need to keep something in our capital.
And we know we're gonna have some huge expenditures coming up soon with the fire department, for one.
We kept utility rates down. We voted last meeting to vote to keep those pretty low, so that was a good
Yeah, this,
thing.
If you have it under major catastrophe again, like we did with the old water plant, that cost the city a lot of money, it don't take long to drain your coffers.
But like I said, we realized we're going to have to increase those, and we didn't want to just hit the property owners with a large increase. We just wanted to kind of boost it every year for the next several years until we get up to the point that it's feasible for us to utilize those numbers.
I can say we was in the high 4s when I come on the council.
Yeah.
And
Thought we
we
were there.
Yeah.
increased.
I think for many years, you were, previous councils were doing what most municipalities do, and that is take it right up to 105%, right under the 5% increase, so you didn't have to go through that truth and taxation hearing. And then maybe 5 to 6 years ago, there was concern, are we just doing this automatically? Or can we justify why we're raising it 5% or 4% or whatever the amount was? And I think because there wasn't that much in the past of saying, here's the additional expenses like you have with the pension. It's kind of led to the idea, let's take it down a little bit. Well, I think you're on the other side of that coin now. You do have expenses, required expenses you can point to and say, this is the reason we're doing it. So I think anything that you go, quite frankly, up to just under that 5%.
yeah, historically, Dan, you're right. It has been 5% for years and years and years. When the talk of the new water plant came in and we realized we were gonna build it, Jenny Gennard was on the council at the time, and I think was in charge of the utility committee. And we knew that rates were gonna go up fairly significant to pay for this plant. And her suggestion was to start trimming back the property tax, which we did. That's what precipitated the original downward trend in requests for tax levy. Since then, the cost to our citizens have been minimal, increases in water this year, as they're alluded to. It's my understanding they'll be minimal again this year, so you're right, it's a cyclical thing. It went down, but when you get hit with $365,000 that you hadn't counted on, boy, that's tough.
The thing of it is we put off capital improvements for 4 or 5 years, and there's some of them up to tune about $1 million, like Tony on the golf course. And you're gonna put that off so long, you're gonna have to start it, if not part of it, and do it on like a 4 or 5 year plan. You're gonna have to start some of these projects.
It's either 2001 or 2002, I don't remember, when the stock market took a huge dive, tech stocks down. Mayor Tindy, there was, Skip, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was almost no capital improvements there.
Yeah,
I mean,
a couple of years.
nothing. And that's nice, but guess what, instead of needing 2 police cars that year, you needed 4 the next, so
It's a domino effect.
it catches up with you, yeah.
All right, well, the committee's going to go on record with recommending 3%. However, I'm sure they'll entertain anything above 3%.
Does the council support 3%?
Do they
Is
support
anybody
something higher?
against, is anybody against 3%?
I would see go higher myself.
Well, that's what I'm saying, do we got 3% support? No one's against it, then do we got any support to go a little higher?
Steve, what do you think?
I think the other taxing bodies are limited to 2.1%, we were saying for that.
I'm sorry?
Other taxing bodies like the school district and county are limited to 2.1%.
Based on what?
Well, they don't all have police departments and fire
Are they
departments.
paying into the pension fund?
That's theirs, that's their.
Right, that's our cap. Our cap is the home rule.
Ours isn't.
No,
No.
Ours isn't home rule.
the five, you can go up to 5%
Without-
whether you're home rule or not.
Truth and tax.
You go above 5% whether you're home rule or not through truth and taxation hearing, but your rates are set by statute. There's a certain amount by which you can't go above it. You're nowhere near that, what you're talking about. So from a statutory standpoint, you're well within your limits, and you will be well within your limits anywhere from 0 to 5% increase, you'll still be within those limits.
You know, someone's gonna ask, and I'm not a math wizard, but if, let's say we raise it 3%, and someone's property is $100,000,
We can't tell you that. There's no way we can tell you that.
Thing of it is, if you want that new swimming pool, stuff like that, you're gonna have to start nest egging that money back for it.
Money's gonna have to come from
They gotta
someplace.
come from somewhere.
What'd you do with it when we had it at 5%?
I wasn't on the
What'd
council.
you do with that money?
We've managed to spend that now, haven't we?
You gotta remember, that 3% is the city portion. You know, the school district, that doesn't count the school district, or, you know.
Chances are they'll come in at 5%.
it's 42%. With the
The library
fire
and
pension,
pension
the police
funds
and library is 42%.
out of ours.
Yeah,
So out of our percent that we're taking, they automatically get 42%.
42%.
So the rest goes back to us when we need something in capital. So I'm saying I'll support the 3, I'll support 3.5. If you guys wanna go up a full percent this year, like Don said, and then every year, see how we need, increase it a percent. Need be.
Well, if we anticipate pensions going up even more next year,
That's,
basic fund.
that's what I'm hearing, but.
You never know what these actually.
No.
It is, $1 million doesn't go very far.
No,
So,
I can spend that.
And you know, the argument is made some years to put more into the pensions. Something that I think is missed on the tax levy. It's, the actuaries make the statement, this is normal cost plus an additional amount determined as a level of percentage payroll to bring the plan's funded ratio to 90% by 2040. So you don't have to voluntarily put extra in.
They're making it. Well,
I don't have a problem making a motion at 3.5 or even 4.
I'll second that.
just feel if we're gonna better the community.
What you're doing here is just getting a consensus
Yeah,
for what
right,
you want me to
yeah.
read,
That's right.
obviously not taking any action.
3.5 gets you another $30,000 in the
Yeah,
city's
almost.
fund.
The reason I say that is because I want to see your response on it. You know, it's got to pass in that council chamber.
Well, let's just have a show of hands of who would support a 3.5%?
Well, and it would only give the city an extra, like,
$30,000.
$30,931, so,
But we need to start putting something back, like you said, and that's the.
Yeah, that's not.
talking much.
No, and, you know,
so it's, I know that 0.5% seems scary, but it's really not scary when you're only talking $30,000.
as long as the public understands that their property taxes are
Not
not
affected.
going
Yeah.
up, at 3.5%.
They do.
But it's not for that percent.
Right.
And remember that 2.4% is what we have to do to
Break
fund,
even.
to fund the pensions. If we go below the 2.4, then we're gonna have to grab general fund money to add to the levy to fund the pensions.
We have to cover the pensions no matter what. If we don't make it off of this, we pay it out of something else. So,
Means your roads are gonna look nasty.
Sounds like 3.5% is the majority's decision.
now you want to talk to 4%?
We have to do it tonight, we have to have 2 readings. by
We have to
the
have
end.
2 readings, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Comments? Thank you. Mayor?
Thanks. Parks and Lakes,
We have one item, discussion surplus vehicles, and Adam's here to answer your questions and tell us more about surplus vehicles. Yes, you do.
We've got 4 vehicles that have been kind of sitting around, that have just been collecting dust in their junk. We need to get rid of them. They're just, I mean, they're old, they're done their time, they've served their purpose, it's just time to get rid of them. So we're just trying to declare them surplus.
Yeah, I read that list of what they were, they didn't seem like they were any good.
One is an 86,
Undercover?
86 orange dump truck. I don't think it's moved in the last 12 years. It's behind the golf course. A 99 crew cab that we used as a dump truck, so it was ran hard. A 94 service truck and a 92 Chevy regular cab. If you'd like to see the 92, it's been out in the parking lot back here behind City Hall for a little while.
Is that the one with the flats out there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, glass on the driver's
Lauren,
side.
It's just, no, it's just the windows
I'll
down.
take it.
It doesn't go back up. No, they're old, we just need, it's time to get rid of them. They're gonna cost way more money than what they're worth to get any use out of.
So when we okay with surplus, what do you do with them?
We just junk them.
Scrap metal?
Scrap.
Yep, that's all we have tonight, thank you.
Public Protection, Alderman Williams. Thank you. I have one, and it's, discuss Jacksonville Police Department copier agreement.
I know there's been some discussion about copy machines. My lease is up this month, or next month in December. So we started not knowing what we're gonna do, we had to get our negotiations going. So we negotiated a contract with GFI for pretty significant savings. Our previous lease was $57,6804 annually, and we negotiated it down to $4,355.62, which doesn't incur overage costs or fees if we go over certain copies, but it's usually not that significant of amount once we go over. However, the contract is for 5 years to get the cost savings. So,
Well, you'll use it for 5 years, won't you?
yes, and that contract includes maintenance as well.
How does that compare with the one that Sally came to us with?
GFI is the same company that Sally has, I believe.
I think you're right, yeah. I think that's right.
So we're on the same.
Did they ask them to do 5 years also?
I don't know what they asked Sally to do. I think their general contracts are 5 years.
I think for some of the new aldermen, I think some of the hope was that we would try to get everyone on the same cycle, we would leverage buying power by, you know, trying to get one service contract, one holistic approach. And I don't, some of the other aldermen might remember who was gonna take that charge on to try to get all the departments on board with something like that. Because I think that was the feeling of several of the council meetings, was to try to get one contract for the city.
We had special studies.
Yeah.
Travis had that one.
I know.
I'll tell you, I talked with Rex, who negotiated this contract. I think he also negotiated water sewer. I had a company come to me that had already come to me and talked about that. They came back the second time, I talked about it again. When the contract came up for the police department, I called Rex in to find out what he thought about the possibility. There's a lot of pre-work to be done in order to figure out where, what, when, and what kind of machines that we need. And he said it really is a difficult thing to do because each department needs are different. Having GFI do the two, it's a good possibility that we could stay with GFI, but they'll all be separate contracts. He didn't feel like a complete contract would be, now I'm not saying we can't do that, but we could talk to GFI about the possibility of doing that.
Because he being Rex or he being GFI?
Rex. And he's in charge of communications and things like that, so he's the one that's been doing some of that.
It'd be worth to get with a couple of companies and get us some
Yes.
numbers, cause if it's $1,000, it ain't worth it, but if it's 50,000.
Well, you can see they saved 1,000 just by going with their contract there too, so. Mine's coming up next year, the main one there in my office. So,
You just use his.
well, he's got a number of copies that he can make. Once he goes over that, he'll start hitting you. They hit you about 4 cents to 7 cents a copy, depending on black and white and color.
No, I think it'd be worth looking into what company was all.
I've already talked to Rex, and we're gonna work and see what we can do, because like I said, mine's coming up, so we'll get a hold of GFI. I'll talk to, this other company that I've been talking with, and, we'll see
How many
what they
contracts,
can
does
do.
Kelly have a contract?
No, I don't think he does up there. I think you got Sally, police, mine, of course, water sewer, or the water plant. ESDA has theirs, their own down there. There might be one other, but I'm not sure that it's Kelly's. But anyway, we'll put Rex kind of on, I asked him to take the lead on it and try to work.
Because
on
I'd
it.
hate to see, I mean, you need to move forward, you have to have a copy machine in November, right?
December 18th.
December, unless they can give you an extension while we try to figure this all out, but I think it'd just be great to,
Well, when you're talking with these people, Lawrence, the one thing that you wanna ask them is, how can you get us out of the other contract or whatever with, how can we put it all together? Because if we go with the same company, GFI, I'm sure that we'll be able to work something out.
If we make a package, we can get him to lease,
Absolutely.
apply to your lease,
And-
if we do the package.
And Sally, the same thing. I mean, if we put it all together with the same company, it should work out.
well,
If we were gonna go with a different company, then
well, and I know from a previous position that I had, just FYI, that when we moved, somebody who really, really wanted our printing paid for us to get out of the lease for someone else.
They
Correct.
will do, that's part of
So-
the negotiation
so-
that they've done. We've had companies want to buy out the other companies. So it's possible that you could combine all of these, but
Yeah.
it would require a buyout and somebody negotiate all of it together.
because they put these out to lease companies, they don't pull them themselves. They're put out to a company that they deal with, so you've gotta work that out with the lease company.
Well, I'd like to see it too. I'd like to see us move forward on that.
It's halfway, it was too late to really help the police department out, but, we'll put Rex on it and I'll help Rex.
So what are we talking about as far as
Supporting his lease.
to support his lease then?
Have to do it.
They need it.
Down to the wire.
And just that we started these in June, so it's been on for a while to get it to where we are with the expiration next month.
If we get started now, skips next year.
Yeah.
Okay, utility, Alderman Walkle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, we're gonna discuss archaeology survey proposal for the surge suppression project down at Naples. And we have tonight Adam Fox and Jimmy Evans to let us know what's going on.
Thank you. Adam's gonna pass out a map of the surge suppression project areas down by the wells there, so. Quick reminder what this project entails, and especially for the new council members. We're talking about protecting the pipeline from the wells to the water treatment plant with the surge suppression system, kind of the air tank with water essentially where when the pressure transients happen in the transmission main, that helps keep those high pressures at a low level. And as far as what the construction would entail, it's a tank of about 20 feet long, about 10 feet diameter, so it's fairly large. It'd be in a building about a third, again, the length of this room, so kind of talking about a shed and some pipe and equipment down by the wells. About a year ago, the city council authorized us to proceed with design and permitting, and since that time, we've been working on the project. The first item of business was to get the phase 1 archeological survey completed, and we did that. And not too much surprise, there was archeological artifacts found down in the area, and you can see on your map the project area with the red dot. That's where the surge suppression tank's going to go. The yellow outline is one of the archeological districts down there. So from that, they proceeded in with the phase 1 survey then last January through March 2018. From the data that they found, they are recommending that we need to proceed with the next level. So we'll go through a few of the challenges here. One of the challenges in this area is that the city's wells, and when I'm talking about the wells, the rainy well, but also the 2 gravel pack wells. Those are in the same area, but at somewhat separate locations, all connected to the transmission main. That's in the Naples Archeological District, so that has a kind of a heightened awareness about archaeological artifacts in that area. One of the other challenges too that we've experienced over the last year, IHPA, Illinois Historic Preservation Agency, was the acronym for the historic preservation folks that we normally work with. They have now since changed that acronym to State Historic Preservation Office, and now they're under DNR. So over the last year, they've had a lot of turnover. The state archaeologists and a few other key staff members have switched. So now those new staff members are in place, and we have kind of an idea of what we need to do. So they are requiring additional excavation in the area of the project, and it requires that to be done before any construction takes place. So one of the things that we need to do now, or have needed for a while, is to take soil borings in order to design the foundations for these large tanks. That, and then follow up with being able to, construct the project. So we finally got the requirements from State Historic Preservation Office in their memorandum of agreement, and University of Illinois Archaeological Department has prepared the data recovery plan, and they're requiring the city to excavate the project area. Before they might have done this with spades and shovels, kind of, every so often, every meter or so. Now they're going to require like a very detailed archaeological excavation. And anything that's found in that area is curated and taken to the State Historic Museum. We're not really sure exactly what they found at this point. They've found small pieces of clay and pots, things that you may find in this area. No human remains or anything like that. But that's going to be a requirement. So you can imagine that takes a good deal of effort. At this point, we've received a cost from University of Illinois, and that cost is $59,404. Adam, how many would be on their team, and how long would it take for them to do
They
that
have
roughly?
scheduled a team of 4 for 16 10-hour days is what they're anticipating as a kind of a middle of the road estimate of what they expect to find there and the time it would take to recover all of it.
Right, so it's a bit of a work effort. There are some other folks in the state who do this work, but not that many. We've had some business with some others in the past, maybe different universities. They're not quite as well staffed as U of I is. They're also not quite as versed on getting the report and the information back in a format that State Historic Preservation Office will approve. And that's really the kind of the big picture item here is, as any project the city does, you have a number of permits you have to get. Historical Preservation, Corps of Engineers, EPA construction in this case, and none of the other entities will sign off until they also have this permit in hand as well. So they kind of all work together on this, so it is going to be required. So, $59,000 doesn't seem very palatable to me, so we tried to figure out what some options were. Could we move the surge tank out of this historical district? The challenge there is you could move it up to the east along the transmission main, but really the correct spot to get the maximum benefit to the transmission main, which is really why you're putting it in the first place, is right down there by the rainy well. It has to do with how the pressure transients move back and forth at the speed of sound through that transmission main. So if you're going to put it in the wrong place, it's really not worth putting it in at all. So we thought, well, maybe there's a previously excavated location on the site. The rainy well's there. There's an old generator building there. Maybe we could remove that generator building and utilize that space and make a connection. We checked on that. No matter what we do, they're going to require it as long as we're in this site location.
The whole
So,
area.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
Because we're in that whole big area, right?
Right.
What are they looking at? I mean,
Whatever they find is what they want to try to look at.
But there,
That's a circular answer, I don't mean.
if they were to find a burial ground, would that halt the whole project?
It could definitely delay it. We would probably have to move the location of it. They don't anticipate finding that based on their original field excavation they've already done.
There is a known burial ground, but it is a quarter mile north or maybe
Kinda up
further
in the
north.
Smith Lake
No,
area.
so they don't anticipate anything, but then it would require like a tribal consultation at that point, and, you know, we could still do the project, but it would probably delay things, and
Yeah, and we could shift it up and down the transmission main a little bit to avoid something like that, but if we completely get it out of this area, that's where we start running into problems.
Well, Jamie, is it possible that after we spent the money in order for them to do this excavation, that it could be stopped? You know, the progress stopped because of finding something?
Yeah, we still owe the $60,000 and stop what we're doing.
I mean, if they find something on the second day and have to change course, then there would only be those costs, you know, till the point where they stop. Is that what you mean, Tony?
Well, I
If they
mean-
had to change kind of what they're gonna be doing?
Even at, let's say all the way at the end at $60,000 or so to speak, but at that very last day, they start finding things. Will that halt that progress?
They'd probably go ahead and complete the excavation and then get on to the next phase of requirements, which would be to, you know, take care of what's next. Yes, I don't have that for you. I don't understand exactly what that
I was
is.
just wondering if it.
They don't have
any
any-
lost.
they don't have record of any structures or anything like that in this site that would be down deep. They expect everything to be within the top 20 to 30 inches.
Oh.
And, you know, that's kind of estimate they've used for how deep they will go. And they expect to be able to recover every artifact there within that depth of soil.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Is this a flat fee for what they're doing, or should they go over their 16 days, go 20 days? Are we gonna owe a little more?
Good question.
Right now, it's for the 16 days. They've estimated high in their opinion based on what they've told us.
Right.
You know, if we get 2/3 of the way through and they feel like there's more, I think we need to stop and say, this is the end of it. Let's reconsider what we gotta do here, because this is, you know, this is where we're at. Unfortunately, the challenge here too is that it's somewhat undefinable, because like Tony said, if they do find something in a certain area and they have to go down an extra foot, that's where we start running into a little bit of unknown. So they've given a certain price for a certain amount of days with a certain amount of people, and that's about as defined as we can get it right now.
Okay, but that can fluctuate, it can be
Yeah.
more, it can be less.
Yeah, and you know, we're gonna be keeping track with them every day. The city's gonna be involved with some of the excavation, so we'll know how it's going after a few days and kind of what they're thinking. And they're pretty good folks. They realize this is a pretty good bit of money, and we'll be in communication on it. As much as I don't like this recommendation, I would recommend to the city council that you move forward with this agreement so you can get this taken care of.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Okay, any public comment?
I'm at 375.
Yeah.
We will adjourn.
Pretty much.